Hey, welcome to Instagram Live with James Altucher. I feel less shaven and clean than normal, but I'm hoping that we could have an interesting time here with some Q&A. I feel like the past few weeks have been interesting in that we've been consumed with, oh my God, how many deaths in Italy last night? How many hospitalizations in New York City yesterday? There's just been so much data and we've been overwhelmed. And then there's cures and there's vaccines. And what happened to that cure? They supposedly had a vaccine in 3 days. Where is it? And where's all the ventilators? Like, we've been consumed with data and data and data. And then the economy, 10 million unemployed. What's the data? What's going to happen? What's the new normal? So we've all been living in this entire era of uncertainty and fear, and we just don't know. Like, there's so many things we don't know, and we've been living with that. Oh, thank you. You like this shirt? I'll tell you about this shirt. It's from Untuckit. They used to be a sponsor of my podcast, and the whole idea of this shirt, not to interrupt our usual coronavirus announcements, the whole idea of this shirt is that you don't have to tuck it in. So untuck it. And I hate I've never tucked in my shirt in my life. I always think tucking in the shirt is weird. I don't know why. So I don't like they have this new shirt, the Untuck It. It's great. So I think here's the interesting thing. Not that I want to say, oh, I've been right, but for the past 3 weeks or 4, however long we've been doing these IG Lives, and for the people who have been on it all along, we've been saying the same thing. The story has not changed, which is that, I've been saying the virus has a lifespan. And by the way, everything I say, 100% of the things I say about the virus, I say not because I'm a medical doctor, but because I've been talking to the top epidemiologists and immunologists and healthcare people involved in what's going on. Even people fairly high up in the government, I've been talking to them. And it's important, and what I've been saying all along is that most of the mathematical models out there, even the ones done by medical PhDs, even the ones being used by the government to make predictions, most of the mathematical models have been wrong. And they've been wrong on purpose because everybody wants to scare you. And they want to scare you for their own reasons. The media wants to scare you to sell more newspapers. The government wants to scare you so that they don't make a mistake and open things up when things might be scary. I don't even know why the government wants to scare you. Maybe they want to scare you so that you stay indoors and don't go outside. Isn't it weird that basically a bunch of really old people want young, healthy people to stay indoors, not go outside, keep your kids inside, nobody's allowed sunshine, nobody's allowed to play, everyone's scared so they don't sleep. So it's like all these old people want everybody to be unhealthy all the time, just as unhealthy as they are. And so now they got what they want. The entire country is just as unhealthy as all the old people in government. And I'm not even talking about Republicans or Democrats. They're all 97 years old, and they want us to live the lifestyle of 97-year-old people. Here's the latest. And again, if you've been on these IG Lives all along, you know what I've been saying, which is that the virus has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And I said from the very first IG Live and in my podcast, the peak will probably happen for the country around April 15th. In New York City, it's probably already happened. It probably already happened in the past few days. We'll see. In Italy and Spain, the peak has certainly happened. Who knows? When you say that to anybody, they get upset. Like, some people really want bad news. So if I say that to people, usually they say, well, we don't know. We could see a second wave in Italy. But if you're in lockdown, it's hard to if you're in lockdown, it's hard to get sick. What am I going to do? Like, inject myself with coronavirus? I've been in this room for 12 straight days. How am I going to get sick? So I went outside this morning, just walking in the street. Everyone's wearing a mask. And I get it. People are wearing a mask because the CDC told them to. And we're all a bunch of little robots doing whatever the CDC tells you to do. But who is breathing on me? I'm just walking. There's nobody on the street. Everybody's 20 feet from each other. No one's breathing on me. I'm not breathing on anyone else. A month ago, you needed to wear a mask. But right now, hospitalizations in New York City are going down every day. Nobody is getting sick. We'll see in 10 days who got sick today, but I will bet $100,000 there'll be that 10, 12 days from now, very few people will be entering the hospital in New York City, and fewer people will be getting sick. So out of the 8 million people in New York City, maybe, I don't know, 100 people will enter the hospital 10 days from now, which means nobody is getting sick today. Because how can you get sick? No one, unless it sort of filters in through the door or something, no one's breathing on me, except my wife, occasionally, if I beg for it. Then she's breathing on me. But the reality is, it's very hard now to get sick when we're all inside. And we've been inside for for more than 20 days. And from the time you get infected to the time it's severe enough to go to the hospital is 10 days. So everybody entering the hospital now, it's most of the people who are entering the hospital now are people who are greatly exposed to people with coronavirus. So sadly, the people who are entering the hospital now are hospital workers because they're the ones most exposed to coronavirus. So that's the key piece of data that we're starting to realize in the past few days is that you get this virus if you're greatly exposed to it. If someone's like coughing on you, or if you're at a buffet in a cruise line next to a bunch of other 80-year-old obese people with diabetes and you're all touching the same food and forks and this stuff, yeah, you're gonna get it. But if you're just passing someone in the street and they're 5 feet away and you're here and they're there and they're staring at me because I'm not wearing a mask, all I'm gonna get from them is hatred. I'm not gonna get this virus. So we'll see what happens, but the peak in New York City has probably passed, which means in a few weeks, we'll start to see really the end, meaning, fewer and fewer and hopefully at some point 0 hospitalizations. Italy and Spain, the peak has passed. The US, the peak, I'm sticking with it. I've been saying it for the past month. The peak will probably happen around April 15th, give or take, and the end will probably happen around June 1st. I would say I'm hoping the government is smart enough to start reopening May 1st. There's certainly no reason, like even in Florida, I don't know the number of cases per day, but even in Florida where you have an elderly population, you have all these people on beaches, they're not seeing anywhere near as many cases as New York City because New York City is densely packed, we're all breathing on each other, and it's colder. So when David Sinclair was on my podcast, he said the virus does not like 80-degree temperatures and does not like humidity and so on. And so, but what I wanted to say, though, was I'm starting to get, and maybe you are too, I'm starting to get data fatigue. Like, every day, they're making a new prediction. Like, for 200,000 deaths in the U.S. How could there's 50,000 or 60,000 deaths worldwide? How is there going to be 200,000 deaths and many of those countries have already passed the peak. So how is there going to be 200,000 deaths in just the United States? It's impossible. So there's going to be less deaths from coronavirus in the U.S. than in the last flu season. And I'd bet money on that. But, I won't because it seems like a tragic thing to bet on deaths. But I would do it anyway if I could bet on that. Might as well. And certainly, insurance companies bet on deaths. Cigarette companies bet on deaths. There's all these things. Like, are we going to have to do lockdowns to prevent, opiate deaths? So there's more opiate deaths per year than coronavirus deaths will happen. So are we going to have to do a lockdown? I am sipping water with, somebody sent me these glasses with my face on it. So I actually have not drunk any alcohol since this lockdown started, and I haven't missed it at all. Normally, I own a bar, which is a comedy club. So a comedy club is always a bar. And so during the week, and I perform stand-up comedy 5 times a week. So during the week, I drink at night occasionally. But since I haven't been to my bar because it's been closed, and since I haven't left the house and I have no alcohol here, oh, there's my wife is on. Everybody say hello to her. And I feel dehydrated. But so anyway, what I really wanted to say was I feel like data fatigue. There's no more data now that's interesting to me because everything has happened. We've peaked in New York City. whether people believe it or not, we have. Hospitalizations have been down every single day. And then someone tried to argue with me, oh no, there was an uptick in deaths. Okay, but deaths are a lagging indicator. Hospitalizations are even more important. Hospitalizations, of course, lead to either recovery or death. So if hospitalizations are down, deaths will go down a few days later. So New York City's peaked. California, Washington, and Oregon, not only have they peaked, they've given back their ventilators. They've sent over to New York City their ventilators. They don't even need the ventilators anymore. So U.S. is going to peak around April 15th, give or take. Spain, Italy's already peaked. The rest of the world, I don't know, probably will peak in May or mid-May. Who knows? It depends on which countries get it. Also, the higher temperatures, despite what everyone is saying, the temperatures do affect the transmission of the virus. The virus does not like 80 degrees or more. It does not like humidity. So that's going to speed along the end. And then the question is, when will the government reopen? And from what I understand from people I know in government is that there is an internal battle between healthcare officials, Republicans, Democrats, all the different constituencies. And I'm hoping that at the end of April, states will start to reopen. You know, states are going to reopen whether the governments like it or not. Like, businesses aren't going to want to stay out of business forever. But here's the thing. Here's an interesting thing. Someone says, I've hit my peak in comedy. Probably not. By the way, I don't know, Louis C.K. just released a special called Sincerely, and he actually addresses his masturbation issues. It's kind of an interesting special. So I'm not going to say one thing or the other because who knows. But what I wanted to say was, given that everything has played out exactly like we've been saying on these IG Lives and what we've been saying on the podcast and what all the experts have been saying, ignore all the data, ignore the headlines. Like the New York Post today, because they can't tell the good news, like the headline should have been, hospitalizations down 4 days in a row in New York City. That's the big news. They didn't use that headline. Instead, they used the headline, here's who's died. And then they have these really sad, horrifying portraits of people who have died. We get it. This is sad. No one argues with that. But are we going to do a movie about all the people who've died? Like, do you have to keep reminding us? Like, life is pretty hard anyway. So my whole thing now is, I'm sick of all the data because we've been right all along. Just ignore all the data. The data is this thing's peaking. Now, on the economic front, it's really important to know this is not like other recessions. This could be much worse or it could be much better. So what's much better is that there's 10 million people unemployed, but not all 10 million of those people are unemployed the way they are in a recession. The rules changed during the stimulus package. So this is important to know. A few weeks ago, if you filed for unemployment, that meant you were fired from your job. That's the only thing it meant. But now, if you file for unemployment, because of the stimulus package, you might be a part-time worker, which means you're getting a paycheck somewhere else. You might be self-employed, which means you're getting a paycheck from somewhere else. You might be furloughed, which means as soon as businesses reopen, you're going to be rehired. You haven't really been fired. You've just been, you just stay home without pay. So a lot of this 10 million is going to go back into the economy very quickly. The other thing is, unemployment insurance got extended. So if you're a school teacher right now, you should try to get fired because school teachers make less than unemployed people will make with the stimulus package. So self-employed, you just said self-employed equals fucked. That is true for the short term, but you should file for unemployment, sir. And also, potentially, you could even file for some of these SBA loans in the stimulus package because you will make more money even. So let me see. Someone says, someone has coronavirus. When they do, that it's counted as a coronavirus. Yeah, so that's the other thing. Each country is counting deaths differently. So that's why hospitalizations now is even more important number than deaths. But if you have, let's say you have pneumonia and coronavirus, and then you die, they call it a coronavirus death. They don't call it a pneumonia death. So all of these numbers are crazy. The bottom line is there's going to be less deaths from corona. Now, here's the other thing that's considered a sin. If you say coronavirus is like the flu, everybody thinks you're an idiot. But let's look at the differences. First off, it turns out the fatality rate of coronavirus is probably very similar to a flu. And the contagion rate might also be similar to the flu. And fewer people might get coronavirus than get the flu. But very important difference between coronavirus and the flu is that if you go to the ICU and get on a ventilator, you will be on a ventilator twice as long as if you went on a ventilator because of the flu. Because the flu doesn't affect the lungs as much as coronavirus. That is a very important difference, particularly as far as the healthcare system goes. So that's the main difference between coronavirus and the flu. So for all the people who are saying, oh, you're not allowed to say coronavirus is like the flu, just shut up and every day the story changes and the data is different and we're learning more and more. Turns out the numbers are very much like the flu, except for this final number, which is that if you get severely affected by coronavirus, you might spend longer time on the ventilator. And that's in part because you might be older and have other lung conditions and so on. So again, is that the coronavirus or is that because you got coronavirus because you're 90 years old? We don't know. Now, so I'm sick of the data. That's the data. We've peaked in New York City. We're going to peak in the US. I think when we started doing these IG Lives, people were concerned that the virus was going to last for 12 months. No, it's going to die off by end of May, early June in the US, and then maybe within a month or two after that around the entire world. Will there be a second wave? Of course there will be. Will there come around next year? Of course so. But there's 30 cures that are in medical trials right now. So hopefully we get a cure. We also know a lot more about social distancing. I hope to God we never shut down. It was very much a mistake to shut down the economy. And I don't know if the government fully realizes that. Some people in the government realize that. Some people don't. But they didn't want to take any chances. So who knows? So let's talk about what does the new normal look like. And someone's asking, is Trump trying to pull tricky business, getting rid of the? No, I don't know the question. So someone says, is there a go-to marketing book you'd recommend reading? Yes, I like reading Purple Cow by Seth Godin. But here's the important thing: if you want to survive and flourish after this, I don't like all these people are giving advice like, oh, use this time to be productive, to be creative. And at first even I was saying that, and I realized don't give people a homework assignment on top of worrying about coronavirus and teaching their kids and figuring out how to survive and blah, blah, blah. Now I've got to also like make a movie or something just because I'm home. I don't know if you're like me, but I sort of feel like the days have become shorter. Like I wake up a little bit later and then I binge watch TV at night and then I go to sleep and I do these IG Lives in the middle and I try to do a little bit of stuff in between, but don't put pressure on yourself. You don't have to be super productive during this time. I think it's much more valuable to think about what is it right now. Given that this is now, we know this is going to come to an end. We know that the virus is peaking. You see it in all the data. The virus is peaking all over the world. Whether it's peaked in your area or not, we'll see. But in Italy and Spain, it's peaked. In Asia, it's peaked. In New York City, it just peaked, probably. In the US, it'll peak in a week, probably. I mean, you can't ever say anything for sure. But start to ask this question now. What have you enjoyed about this period? And I'm not saying, what are you grateful for? Because we don't really know yet. And that feels artificial somehow. But there are some things that I've legitimately enjoyed about this time, taking out all the anxiety and the uncertainty, like uncertainty inside. I enjoy not having to go to meetings. I enjoy not having to travel because somebody wants to meet with me. Like I have an idea for a TV show, for a couple of TV shows. And so I had meetings set up for the end of April to go to LA to pitch all these networks on TV shows. And all the meetings were set up. And I was like, oh man, I got to go to California. I love California, but I don't really want to travel. And because of this lockdown, I've stayed home. And now we're going to pitch everybody over Zoom, which is so much more fun for me. I don't have to leave. I don't have to travel. I don't have to take a plane. I don't have to stay in a hotel. I can just do it from here. So I enjoy not traveling for shitty meetings. to meet people I don't really know and it's probably going to be worthless meetings. So that's a great, exciting thing. I don't have to even go to meetings downtown. If I had a meeting that was downtown, now I can just do it on Zoom. Who cares about being face-to-face? You know what the problem with face-to-face is? You have to look people in the eye. I would rather just look at their face. Their eye is where the camera is, and I don't want to look people in the eye anymore. I'm tired of shaking people's hands. Like now, I really enjoy the fact that for a whole month, I have not had to shake anyone's hands. I haven't shaken a hand since I was in the Netherlands about a month ago. I haven't shaken a single hand since then. And man, you know what's even the best? Sometimes you go in to shake the hand and they're like doing the bro hug. No more bro hugs for me. Done with the bro hug. Like one time I had, maybe I told this story, but one time I had Kareem Abdul-Jabbar on the podcast. He's the greatest basketball player in history. He's 7'2". I'm going in to shake the hand, and then I realized too late he was going in for the bro hug, and I had to switch, and I end up kissing his elbow by accident. It's very awkward. And then I'll tell you one story. So Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, yeah, I like the head nod. I'm going to start using the head nod, or like a little bow. And so Kareem Abdul-Jabbar told me this story. He was once in an elevator with Wilt Chamberlain. And Wilt Chamberlain, if you know, is also a great basketball player. He's also 7'2". So Kareem Abdul-Jabbar says to me, a guy looking just like you, I don't know what that means, walks into the elevator. So I'm 5'9", and this guy looks up at them and says, how's the weather up there? So Wilt Chamberlain spits on the guy and says, it's raining. And so that was the only joke Kareem Abdul-Jabbar told me, but I thought it was worth telling. And if you guys like that, I will tell Kareem Abdul-Jabbar that people on Instagram thought that joke was funny. But Wilt Chamberlain, by the way, I don't know if you read his autobiography. He said he had sex with 20,000 women. I don't know whether I should believe it or not. Oh, I'm hearing a sound. I don't know where that sound's coming from. But anyway, I am married, and hopefully I will be married for the rest of my life. So 20,000 is going to be out of my reach. But who cares? I feel bad that Wilt Chamberlain felt the need to have sex with 20,000 women. Just the math seems difficult. It seems kind of logistically, I don't know if I can organize that. I'm not very organized. So again, I think it's kind of a useful exercise to figure out what it is that you've enjoyed during this time. Like I've enjoyed being a little more isolated than usual. I think sometimes I'm out a little too much. I've enjoyed spending time with my wife, even though a lot of our time that we're together, we're binge watching a sitcom or lately we've been watching Breaking Bad, but I've enjoyed that time with her. And I've enjoyed these IG Lives, which I only started doing because of this lockdown, but I'm going to hopefully continue them. And I've enjoyed making some TikTok videos. It's a different kind of creativity that I'm used to. And I've enjoyed not having to change my clothes as much, or not having to, I've enjoyed not having to try to look good. So, not that I look good anyway, but look, I have to try really hard to even look modestly acceptable. So I've enjoyed that part. I've enjoyed, I've enjoyed my kids, but my kids are spread out. I have 2 kids upstate New York. I have 2 kids here. I have 1 kid in England. So we've all been kind of spread out a little bit, and we stay in touch. So I've enjoyed that. I've enjoyed doing podcasts remotely. I don't do podcasts in person anymore, but Zoom has been great, or I use something called Squadcast to do podcasts, and I just finished a podcast just now with some guy in Vermont. Such a pleasure. I don't have to go to Vermont, or he doesn't have to come here. I did a podcast that we released today, a guy who's a professor at Stanford focusing on the neuroscience of how to deal with anxiety during this virus. So I didn't have to fly out to Stanford, or he didn't have to fly out to here. It was totally acceptable to do the podcast on Zoom. And I also enjoyed, so during this period, I've asked on Twitter for people to send me, so I own a local business, and I see a lot of other local businesses. All the employees have been laid off in every local business. So all the restaurants, all the clothing stores, and so on. So a lot of these employees have set up GoFundMes to help, so people could contribute and help the employees survive this difficult time. So I enjoy asking on Twitter for people to send me their GoFundMe links, and I've been donating to them and then sharing that. And I think other people, whether you contribute $10 or $100 or whatever is comfortable for you, do that. Or, for the first time in forever, I was able to volunteer in New York City on a kind of a homeless shelter food line. And I've never done that before, I'm ashamed to say. And I did it for the first time about a week or so ago. And my job was keeping everybody 6 feet apart on the line because the police were shutting down these soup kitchens or whatever. So I've enjoyed that part. And yes, that's the podcast I was on, Joe Dispenza's podcast. So I encourage people to think not what they can do. So now that we're nearing a little bit more visibility on the peak of the, not the end, but the peak of the virus, and now that we're having a tiny bit more visibility on things like the stimulus package and the economy, you try not to worry as much about that. Try not to look at the news. Try not to watch every press conference. What I would recommend, and also don't give yourself homework. Don't say, oh, well, I better direct an entire movie during this time or I've wasted my time. You don't need any homework assignments. It's okay to enjoy yourself and just relax and rejuvenate for the first time in your career. Just relax. But also take a step back and see what you've enjoyed. And maybe this is a time to rewire what you're going to enjoy going forward. Like I will tell you for sure, going forward, I'm not going to travel as much for business meetings. Going forward, I'm not going to have as many podcasts in person. I might not even have as many podcasts with guests. I might just go on myself like we're doing here. And, going forward, I don't know. I might not be as serious about business even, just because how much do you really need? It turns out my family and I, we've lived just fine, only spending money on food, not spending money on anything else. We didn't buy anything. We haven't planned any trips. We haven't bought clothes. We haven't bought anything except food. And I've been more happy than ever in that part of my life with in terms of consumerism, minimalism versus maximalism. Now is the time where minimalists and introverts really flourish, but everybody could be a minimalist. Like, see what it is that you really didn't miss from your prior life. And going forward, you don't have to go back to that prior life. If you didn't like your job, you really don't have to go back to it. Now, I know you'll feel like you have to go back to it because you need to get paid, but we're getting these checks from the stimulus package. There's unemployment insurance. If you're getting unemployment right now, you're going to make more money than the average school teacher, which is sort of a problem because many people might not want to go back to work so fast. They might want to stay unemployed. But you know what? Power to them. Like, that will help the economy slowly get back to normal without too much rush while we see the data as it comes in. Enjoy unemployment if you can. Enjoy small business loans if you can. Get money wherever you can right now and figure out if you hate your job, there's going to be other opportunities. Amazon's hiring a lot of people. Walmart's hiring a lot of people. There's going to be startups that start hiring people. Don't forget, in the last recession, what startups started? Slack started, Cloudera, Instagram started in the last recession. Every recession is usually the beginning of a whole bunch of new startups. And so I've been thinking of maybe I'll even do another startup. So I've been playing around with different ideas. And someone says I might have to curse out my boss to get fired. Yeah, ask to get fired. By the way, someone mentions Airbnb. So Airbnb, obviously, one of my favorite companies because I spent about over 2 years just living in Airbnbs. I was switching houses sometimes every 3 days, and I loved it. I loved traveling all over, living in Airbnbs. And I only had my carry-on bag and nothing else. And I would just go from Airbnb to Airbnb. And Airbnb just got $1 billion investment. So there's still investors out there spending money, and there's still companies that are going to thrive. We'll see how Airbnb does in the long run. So okay, I'll share this idea I have, which I think is a good idea. And by the way, I'm sharing things. I think I've shared this before, but I'm sharing things that I think that I'm actually going to work on. So if you want to steal my idea, go for it. There's no stealing. Everybody who's an idea machine, and the way you get it to be an idea machine is by writing down 10 ideas a day, but I feel I have faith that I'm always going to be abundant with ideas. But anyway, my idea is a lot of people who create content don't get paid. So yes, there are some YouTubers that make a ton of money because they have tens of millions of fans. There are some Instagram people who make a ton of money because they have tens of millions of fans. There are people who sell millions of copies of books and they make money. And but if someone does a tweet, they don't make money. If someone has a small YouTube audience but makes a great YouTube, they don't make any money. If someone does a great Instagram post, they don't make any money. So I'm thinking of a way where if I see a really great tweet, I can tip somebody a penny or 25 cents or $1. Or if I see someone who made a good video but they have no audience, I can tip them, $50, $10, $1, 50 cents. So this way, I was talking to Jim McElvey, the founder of Square, and I mentioned this yesterday. He says if you can serve the bottom third of the economy, then you're going to have a huge win. So if I can create a business that serves the bottom half of all content creators and help them get monetized, that'll be a huge business. So that's one idea I've been thinking of. Other ideas, I write down stupid ideas, I write down good ideas. There's all sorts of ideas out there. Another thing is, we don't really know. Well, let me see what questions people have, and then I can say another idea. So someone says, what am I defining as peaked? In terms of when I say the virus peaks, it means that everyone says the number of the virus grows exponentially. So if 10 people die today, 20 people will die in 3 days, 40 people will die in 7 days. So, thank you. I'll put it in the water in my glass. So when I say peaked, it means that the number of new deaths per day is not growing exponentially, but has stabilized and even started to go down. And when you know that the virus is over is when you start to have, less than 10 new deaths per day in an entire country. So what ways do you suggest that we should open the economy? So I basically think what will happen is, hopefully this will happen sooner rather than later. I don't think the economy could survive till the end of May, but I think maybe we can hold out till the end of April. I was really hoping for earlier, but the stimulus package balances that out a little bit. But I think the economy will reopen state by state, and then I think we're going to still have social distancing in some places, but not in all places. Like, we're probably not going to have a big, we're probably not going to go to a baseball stadium, a crowded baseball stadium on May 1st, but, those will gradually reopen as well. But I was just in a takeout place this morning to get coffee. There were people in there. People are standing 6 feet apart. I think we're going to have some moderate social distancing as we reopen the economy. I think we're still going to have huge unemployment numbers, but that's okay because unemployment insurance is larger than it ever was. You can make $1,000 a week on unemployment. So, and then what's going to happen is this next quarter, hold your eyes because the economic data is going to be horrible. But then you're going to see this surge in the economy. I actually have bet on predicted.org that we're going to see at least one quarter with greater than 5% annualized growth in the economy because we're going to see a massive surge. This quarter that we're in right now, we're going to see Great Depression numbers, but who cares? It doesn't matter. Q3 and Q4 and then all of 2021, I'm almost scared we're going to surge too much because there's going to be trillions of dollars. Imagine if the economy itself was a $15 trillion economy. Now it's going to be 40% more because of $6 trillion dropping down on the economy. What's that going to look like? It's almost going to be scary. So I think you got to kind of hold your breath and then wait for Q3, Q4 in 2021, and you're going to see the economy and the stock market surge. So what did I predict for the large gathering after this? I don't think there's going to be concerts and big sports gatherings anytime soon, but I do think there's an opportunity for businesses doing virtual reality concerts and virtual reality events. Like, imagine going to a concert in virtual reality where you can actually go on stage and see and interact with the performers. So how did I handle quarantine with my wife? I think we handled it pretty well because, every couple has tensions, but, a lot of our tensions involve, happen when we're, doing lots of things. And because we're doing fewer things in this isolation, we've been hanging out during the day. She's here right now. And we watch TV at night. We hang out. We take walks. We've been taking nice long walks. And I don't know. We haven't really had any relationship issues. I think a lot of people do have some issues because they're not used to such massive uncertainty in both health and the economy and their careers. And so when you mesh that together, it creates pain. But you just have to be aware of yourself that you're susceptible to being anxious right now because of the extra uncertainty. Then if you're aware of that, you kind of tame yourself a little bit. Like, I'm just as anxious as or uncertain as anybody, but learning to live with uncertainty is one of the most powerful skills you can ever develop if you want to be a creative person. Whether you're a writer or a painter or an entrepreneur, learning to live with uncertainty is the key to success in any form of creativity. And so that's why I asked you earlier, what is it that you actually enjoy right now? Because that's something you could be certain of. I enjoy not shaking hands, for instance. I enjoy not looking people in the eye. That's a small thing, but it's a certainty. I enjoy less travel. That's a certainty. And so these are things that are certain right now for me. And I enjoy these Instagram lives. This is a certainty for me. And if you can isolate and think about what's certain in your life, then you can start to move forward and really tap into your creativity, because you won't be as worried about the monstrous headlines and data and press conferences. Here's what we know. Again, repeating it. The virus is going to end. It's probably already close to peaking in the United States. Probably already peaked in New York City. The virus is going to end. The economy is going to come back. It's going to be totally different, though. We do not know what the economy is going to be, and it's okay to not know. Here's an example. Are you going to go to a movie on May 1st? Maybe yes, maybe no. But one thing that might happen is maybe restaurants as we know it in urban areas are not going to be the same. Maybe a movie theater will change into being just 20 kitchens for 20 different restaurant chains that are just going to have no seating and deliver. We don't know. We don't know how everything's going to come back because this has never happened before. The entire economy, there will be a new normal, just like after 9/11, just like after the financial crisis, but this is 10 times bigger. So there's going to be a new normal. Everything's going to be different. There's going to be new startups that we can't even imagine now. There's going to be new billion-dollar opportunities. There's going to be a lot of people fired and a lot of jobs lost, but there's going to be also a lot of new jobs that start. There's going to be jobs in robotics, in drones, in remote learning, in remote work, in anything with the word remote. If you have a business model or a job that involves something remote, you're going to win out of this. So another thing I've been thinking about is I'm very excited that remote learning is happening. Like if you listened to my podcast yesterday with Scott Galloway, he thought something interesting, which is that colleges are totally, we've talked about it here in a different way, but he said colleges are going to completely change. It might be the case that MIT, for instance, stops as its own standalone college, and instead there might be a Google MIT combination, and then MIT becomes much cheaper. Maybe it's a subscription service. I subscribe to MIT and I subscribe to Berkeley and I take courses from them, and then maybe it's cheaper, maybe it's easier to get a degree, but the education landscape is going to change. It might not change overnight, but it's going to change because colleges, just like any industry, are going to start to go out of business. Big ones, small ones, who knows? So top 10 outdoor retail ideas. That's a great question. I don't have a top 10 outdoor retail idea list because who's going outdoors? Who's going? Let's say the economy reopens on April 30th. Who on May 1st is going to go and say, finally, I get to open up my fishing rod store in New York City? 0 people will do that. Nobody's going to open up a new storefront on May 1st to sell anything, because the next time this happens, you're just going to be out of business. And I think people don't want to take the chance. Look, I own a storefront in New York City. I have a comedy club. What's going to happen is, I don't know. All the comedy clubs, owning a comedy club is like a business of passion more than profit. because you just love comedy. And as it was already difficult because everyone was staying home and watching stand-up comedy on YouTube. So we'll see what happens in this new normal. Like, everyone's getting their small business loans, but it doesn't mean the small businesses are going to survive in the new normal. So, remote teaching, I start to think myself, what kind of classes can I teach? Maybe one thing that would be interesting for you right now is, what class can you teach right now for free to people you know? Like, let's say you were great at baking cakes and everyone always complimented you on your ability to bake great cakes. Do an Instagram Live or do a YouTube video on how you bake a cake and see what it feels like to do online teaching. Don't charge for it day one. You want to give selflessly at first while you kind of figure out the right ways to monetize your brain and your ideas. So if you're going to teach a course right now, do it online by all means, but give it away for free. Give it selflessly. You'll feel good. You'll feel like you're giving service to others. And maybe when the economy comes back, you'll figure out ways to monetize that. If you know how to invest in stocks, or if you have ideas about marijuana stocks or whatever, teach a little course. If you're a great public speaker, teach a course. Figure out ways to teach something, give it away for free. What else can you give for free? What else can you do for free? Do all these things that are going to build your network, your contacts, your online skills, whether it's online teaching or Instagram posts or making videos. I don't know. Has anyone ever taught a bunch of courses on TikTok? You only have 60 seconds on TikTok for each class. Has anyone figured out how to do classes on TikTok? I bet you there has been. Why don't you create, I wonder if there's a business model. Oh, you can sign up for so-and-so's classes on TikTok if you pay a certain amount, or first do it for free and then figure out how to, maybe TikTok is you build your audience and then that's the lead generator for the behind the paywall courses that you teach. So you teach how to bake cakes on TikTok and a bunch of TikTok videos, you build an audience, and now, oh, here's other desserts, that's behind the paywall. So there's all sorts of business ideas that are going to happen with the word remote in it. Gold versus Bitcoin. Gold is just a rock. So at some point, rocks are just rocks. Bitcoin actually has real value to it. So I would say Bitcoin. Let's see. How is it in New York? From Steve in London. It's probably the same as in London, to be honest. London and New York are similarly densely packed, and everybody, the streets are about, everyone's saying, oh, New York City is not quite social distancing. If you actually look at the GPS data that Google has tracked, is that New York City streets are about 90% less full than they were. So instead of having 10 people on the street, there's one person on the street. And by the way, that's enough social distancing. Like, you're not going to get sick if you're the only person on a block. So particularly since New York City has probably already peaked. Someone says cash is still king. You're absolutely right. As soon as this happened, I just basically held onto my cash. I didn't reinvest. I actually even borrowed money off of my investments just to have cash. I paid my rent for a year in advance off of cash that I borrowed. So it didn't affect my cash levels at all. And in general, I encourage people to hold on to cash. Here's one issue. Oh, so here's an interesting question about retirement. I think people are going to view retirement differently because this felt like being retired. We all just sat around watching TV, walking around the lake, going to the park. It felt a little like retirement. And I think people are going to, remember you used to think, oh my gosh, I need X number of dollars and I need to be the CEO before I can retire. Well, maybe now you're going to retire at the age of 45 instead of 65. And you'll move to, I don't know, Kansas City instead of trying to live in a mansion in Westchester or whatever your goals were. Like, I think people are going to view retirement differently because we just clearly, someone says retirement sucks, and I agree, but we're always going to reinvent ourselves. No one's ever just going to sit around and watch TV. Instead, here's what I would suggest. Figure out what you love to do when you were 12 years old, 13 years old, and see how it aged. So when I was 12 years old, I actually really enjoyed writing. And so now I kind of want to write more. Or when I was 12 years old, I loved comic books. And so I don't know what that means. I don't know how that's aged, but who knows? Maybe one day I'll write a science fiction novel or a comic book. Figure out what you loved at the age of 12, how it's aged, and maybe you can do that professionally, even at a smaller scale when you retire. So all these things, are important to ask yourself now. Is what did you love at the age of 12? What does that look like now? Like I know one guy, and I've talked about him before, Matthew Berry. He's the fantasy sports anchor on ESPN. So Matthew Berry was a Hollywood screenwriter, but he always loved sports as a kid, and he hated being in Hollywood. So eventually, he gave up Hollywood. He started writing for $100 a post blogs about fantasy sports because he wasn't athletic, so he switched his interest to fantasy sports. That's how it aged for him. He started writing blogs about fantasy sports, and he grew and grew and grew, and now he's the anchor for ESPN on fantasy sports, starting from scratch. So he went broke after he stopped being a Hollywood screenwriter. So you can always figure out what your passion is by looking back at what you enjoyed 10, 20, 30 years ago and what's happened to it since then and how you feel about it now. And there's always a way to make money. If you can make money in fantasy sports, you can make money pretty much doing anything. And again, this is not about retirement. This is about reinvention. So forget the word retirement. It might be the case that after you've been an accountant at Procter & Gamble for 40 years, that you no longer, or even 20 years, or even 10 years, you no longer want to go back to a cubicle. But you remember you used to love sewing or cooking or science fiction or sports. You used to love that, and you somehow lost track of that when you were an accountant and you went to accounting school, and then you worked at Procter & Gamble, and you fought your way up from the small cubicle to the big cubicle. Don't go back to the cubicle. Dust off your interests, see what they look like now, and start to brainstorm while you're home. What else are you going to do? Start to brainstorm what you could maybe do with those interests. Maybe teach a class on something that you love doing. If you love microbrewing beer, I'd love to learn. Teach a class on how to do it. If when you were in college you loved growing marijuana plants, teach a class on how to do it. I definitely would love to learn that. So if you love sleeping as a kid, no problem. Teach people how to sleep better. That's certainly, we all learned that in this period that sleeping 8 hours a day is so valuable for our immune system. It's really important to do it. Teach a class on how to sleep better. So ways you would increase telehealth clients for a mental health practice during social distancing. What a great question. So I just this morning had a session with my therapist. So my therapist, I always used to get in a cab at 8 in the morning, go all the way across town, meet her for an hour, and then come all the way back. It would waste 2 hours of my life. Today, on Zoom or whatever, I had a teletherapy session, and it's great. She's not even in New York City right now. And I had this teletherapy session, and it was just as good as any normal session. So I think teletherapy and telemedicine is going to be huge. How can you advertise it? Well, guess what? Advertising is cheap right now. Nobody's advertising on Facebook. So target, you could go on Facebook, you could figure out who's your target audience. Maybe it's men 40 years old who are executives, or I don't know, whatever. Figure out your target audience and advertise them. You can advertise super cheap right now on Facebook. There has never been a time in history where advertising for your small business has not been cheaper. Advertise and start to offer teletherapy sessions and do it on Zoom, or do it on, there's a site, I think it's Doxy, D-O-X-Y, I think it's .com, that's specifically for doctors doing telemedicine sessions. So, right, someone just said Facebook is offering big discounts on ads right now. Here's the thing, they are not offering discounts. Right now, what you're seeing is massive, massive, massive deflation. Everything you buy right now should be cheaper. So ads should be cheaper, phones should be cheaper, computers should be cheaper. I get emails, and I'm sure you do too. I get emails all day long that do our special coronavirus sale, doxy.me, D-O-X-Y.me. Here's our special 20% sale. Everything's 20% off. Everything's 40% off. They're not on sale. Those are the new prices. There's deflation until this stimulus hits. You want to buy a car? I can guarantee you there's deflation. So, someone asked, the Louis C.K. just had a new special. Someone's asking, where can you watch this? If you go to, I think it's louisck.com or louisck.net, he has a website, Louis C.K. The special's called Sincerely. I think it was like $7 to buy it or $5 to buy the special and download it. And I would say the special was really good. So yeah, sign up for his list and you'll see where the special is. But I really enjoyed it, and he addresses the masturbation issues. I didn't expect him to apologize as a comedy special, but he did just kind of almost ashamedly say, I'm sorry, this is what I do, this is what I like. And that was that. So, but the special itself was funny, and if you're a student of comedy, Louis C.K. is one of the best out there, or maybe is the best, so he's worth studying, worth watching. So a lot of people like that. I would say it's funny, I probably haven't watched as much comedy during this downtime as I would have liked. A month ago, I was doing comedy all over the Netherlands, and since then, I haven't done any comedy. It's the first time in 5 years I haven't done stand-up comedy at least 3 times a week. So I haven't done it at all. The last time I did it was in Rotterdam or Sval, the Netherlands. Where was the last city we did? Sval, I think. Yeah. I can't even pronounce the city we did it in. So I have not been Dave Chappelle, but when I was in Comedy Wag in Rotterdam, great club. I have to send you an email. Thank you so much for being on the IG Live. It's where you left your sweater. Good seeing you. So that was such a fun time. And so I never met Dave Chappelle, but I will say in the Netherlands, we traveled around with Tony Woods, who's also a comedy hog in Rotterdam. And Tony Woods is famous for not only being one of the best comedians in the world, but he mentored the young 14, 15, 16, 17-year-old Dave Chappelle. And it was such a pleasure. I learned so much from traveling around with Tony Woods. It was like taking a master class in stand-up comedy. So Tony and I have done probably 20 shows together now, like all over the world. Netherlands, New York City, Chicago, Cincinnati. We were supposed to be in Winnipeg today and Florida next week, but that got canceled, and DC the week after, but whatever. But so Bill Burr, I have met. This is a very important lesson, and it's probably one of the last lessons I'll have time for. Bill Burr was performing at a comedy club in the city, the West Side Comedy Club, and I was also performing that night, and they asked me a question. They said, do you want to perform before Bill Burr? Now, Bill Burr is one of the top comedians in the world. Do you want to perform before Bill Burr or after Bill Burr? And of course, everyone said before, and I said immediately after, because that's the hardest spot, because how are you going to perform after one of the best comedians in the world? But if you're learning something, you kind of want to always take the difficult choice. You kind of always want to make the choice that is harder for you. And if you don't make that choice, you're saying no to such a great opportunity to learn. And I say the same thing with writing. I never publish something unless I'm afraid of what people will think of me. Always take the difficult choice, because you're never going to learn if you always take the easy, comfortable choice, because then you're in the same room as everyone else. If I said, no, please put me before Bill Burr or TJ Miller or Tracy Morgan or Sebastian Maniscalco, if I always said that, I would be in the easy, oh yeah, good thing I'm done before the greatest in the world went up. I would never learn anything. So, just to summarize, I've got data fatigue. Everything has played out exactly like we've been saying for the past month. There's peaks happening all over the world for this virus. We'll see what happens next. The economy, the stimulus was passed. The economy is if they reopen the economy by the end of April, which is an unknown, the economy should surge by the end of the year. But there's going to be a new normal, and we don't know what that's going to be like. So you have to learn to live with uncertainty. That's very important. You have to give up the need for certainty here. So find the things you can be certain about. Like again, summarizing, what do you enjoy? Not what you're grateful for, but what do you enjoy about right now? Do you enjoy staying inside? Do you enjoy binge watching TV? I enjoy not shaking hands with people. I enjoy not planning trips. I enjoy not going downtown for meetings, but doing meetings online. I enjoy when there's nobody on the street, actually. I can't stand all the people on the street. I enjoy walking outside when there's nobody there. So And I enjoy these Instagram lives, and I enjoy doing my podcast remotely. So figure out what you enjoy. That gives you some certainty, and it allows you to then focus on your own creativity. Don't feel like you have to be productive. That's a homework assignment. But if you want to be, start connecting things in your life. Start saying, oh, I love this, and I love this. I love sports, and I love punk rock music. Okay, well, take your favorite sports moments from YouTube, snag those videos from YouTube, and then put your favorite punk rock songs on top of them, and then upload them to TikTok. And now you've just combined your interest in punk rock with your interest in sports, and now you're making TikTok videos, this brand new platform that adults are starting to use more and more. So, or start thinking of business models like, oh, you love cooking, but restaurants aren't going to be as popular, but you love Chinese food, or you love Japanese food and you love Mexican food. Okay, well, how about some kind of sushi taco or sushi pizza or sushi with, I don't know, Mexican hot sauce on it. I don't know. Just make a list of things you enjoy and then see what it looks like to combine them. Like you love outer space and you love sports. I don't know, maybe make a video game about baseball on the moon. What would the physics of that be like? Or, I don't know, you love baking and online teaching is going to be big. See if you could teach an online course, even in 60-second Instagram videos. See if you challenge yourself. See if you could do that and give it away for free. Anything you do right now for free is going to pay off. Free is so valuable right now because everyone's home alone and they want to hear from you, but they want it for free. So give for free. Give of yourself for free, and I can guarantee you will see benefits from it. Try it tomorrow and see what happens. You will see the benefits. Just give one thing for free, and you will see how people respond. And then start listing. Trust me, write 10 ideas a day down every day. And tomorrow, what I'm going to do is all the different types of ways I write 10 ideas a day down. So I'll talk about idea sex, idea addition, idea subtraction, idea multiplication, idea division. I'll talk about all these different types of ideas and how I write ideas down, and I'll give you specific examples on the IG Live tomorrow. If you have any more questions, you could always email me at altucher@gmail.com, or if you're an employee with a GoFundMe setup, email me at altucher@gmail.com or tweet it out and I'll retweet it and share it with everybody, and I'll try to donate. I'll donate to each one. But I will see you tomorrow at 2 p.m. I'm going to share this. Thank you so much. Come back tomorrow at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I'm going to share this on my IG Live Stories Live. Thanks.